And feel free to start when you're ready.
Cool. Awesome. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen here. Sweet. Chris, can you see this okay?
Yeah, pretty clear.
Okay, awesome. Cool. So hey guys, like Chris mentioned, I'm Elan. I'm from the Alchemy team. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Alchemy's blockchain developer platform, specifically for Polygon. So we're going to give you kind of a high-level overview of our products, and then we'll jump right into the demo. So Alchemy's blockchain developer platform is supported on multiple chains, Ethereum, Polygon, of course, and then a couple other layer 2s and layer 1s as well. We have sort of 6 core products that I'm going to talk about in these slides. But before I jump into those products specifically, I'd like to talk a little bit about one of the core challenges when it comes to blockchain development that Alchemy is really honed in on and targeting. So this has to do with node infrastructure. And I'm assuming most of the audience here knows what nodes are, but just in case you don't, nodes are basically our access points to the blockchain. So if I'm building a decentralized application and I want to read and write to the blockchain, so make requests and then maybe read like data back from it, I need a node client to actually have that communication channel, and I send my requests through that node to get that data. And this is like a pretty core part of Web3 applications. However, there are tons of challenges when it comes to actually building and running a node infrastructure. First and foremost is just kind of pure downtime. So nodes can actually take days to sync up to the current state of the blockchain. So you can imagine it has to catch up to all the historical data and then maintain state with the current one. So that can take up to days. Not to mention, once you get that node synced and ready, they can easily go down. So these can be due to things like huge traffic spikes, or maybe there's a node client upgrade that you weren't aware of, but they do have a lot of like reliability issues when it comes to just being up and running. The second of these core challenges is scalability. And so let's say, I ran a node, I have an application, I wake up one day and I have a huge influx of users. So millions of users come and travel to my application. This can cause a huge traffic spike. And because nodes take a couple of days to spin up, I can't just spin up a node immediately. And this can cause extreme downtime. So huge influx of users sending requests to my node, it can crash because there just aren't enough, doesn't have enough ability to handle all of those requests. And so they don't really scale well. And even if I do actually end up scaling my node infrastructure to accommodate for tons and tons of users, I can run into issues like data consistency. So, I'm going to kind of quickly talk through this example because it's a little bit nitty gritty. But let's say I'm a user and I want to buy a CryptoPunk, right? And as an application, I've now accounted for the scalability thing. I spun up a load balancer and a bunch of nodes, right? So I created a bunch of nodes. I was like, I'm anticipating a lot of users. I put a load balancer in front of it so that when the requests hit my application, I can distribute the traffic to different nodes. So they don't get overloaded with one node. And so I'm a user. I buy CryptoPunk. That CryptoPunk transaction gets mined on block 102, right? So I send my transaction to the load balancer. It spits back like, hey, yeah, you have the CryptoPunk on block 102, right? Then another user comes along and they also want to buy that same exact CryptoPunk. So they send their request to buy that CryptoPunk and they get spit back block 100. What does that mean? Technically, in their world, I don't own the CryptoPunk yet. They're on block 100, I'm on block 102. So now we have 2 different states of a blockchain, right? And if you're an application and you're selling things through your application, that's a really, really core problem, right? You can't sell things to 2 people if one thinks they own it and the other one thinks they own it. And this has to do with just the kind of core properties of nodes, right? So at any given point in time, one node might not have the same state and the same data as the rest of the nodes. And that's because nodes propagate information, right? So I get a transaction, I have to send that to other nodes around me. And so at any given time, I might know about one, but your nodes might not know about one. So you can't really just spin up a load balancer and then scale up your infrastructure, because that can cause really extreme data consistency issues that can be just detrimental to your product. Cool. So now that we have a sense of like what the kind of core problems with node infrastructure are, I'll talk a little bit about how we solve them. So one is Alchemy Supernode. This is sort of our bread and butter product. And we basically built out a higher level infrastructure that solves all of these really, really core issues when it comes to node infrastructure, right? So it's one, the scalability problem. How do I scale up instantly if I get an influx of users? Supernode solves that. Data incorrectness. How do I make sure that at any given point in time, all of my users have the same exact state of the blockchain, even if the nodes might not have the same state? Supernode solves that. And then also just reliability. We make sure all the nodes are up to date at all times. We make sure we only are using healthy nodes that are healthy, and then we're in there repairing nodes that aren't healthy. So I won't get too into the nitty gritty weeds of how Supernode works, but this is sort of Alchemy's bread and butter product. This is kind of why the majority of Ethereum applications and now growingly Polygon are using Alchemy. Cool. So in addition to sort of our core node infrastructure products, we've also built out a suite of really pivotal developer tools. So the first of those is Alchemy Build. And this is a suite of developer tools for sort of debugging incidents that come up without your application. So we have dashboard tools like being able to search through all your historical requests, a mempool visualizer for understanding what the status of your transactions are, the status of your users' transactions are. And then also a bunch of other kind of exploration tools like the composer in the browser. Alchemy Build's sister product is Alchemy Monitor. And so this is to help you recognize issues in the first place. So Alchemy Build kind of helps you debug them and figure out what's going on. But Monitor allows you to just kind of instantly recognize and know about issues before your users do, which is super important. So this includes things like performance and user insights, usage analytics throughout your application, sort of like health monitoring, and then alerts for kind of like failing requests, rate limited requests, whatever that might look like. The third product here is Alchemy Notify. So Alchemy Notify are real-time notification webhooks that you can integrate into your product, both so that you can be immediately aware of anything that's going on in your application and to be able to send notifications to users about their transaction status, transaction activity to drive further engagement and bring them back to your product. Second to last kind of product here in our suite are the enhanced APIs. So enhanced APIs are a powerful suite of APIs built on top of the standard JSON RPC spec. And these are to get things like, we sort of abstracted away basic things. So something like full historical transaction activity. If I'm a user, I'd like to know like all my transactions that I made since Genesis, and I can do that with one request using the enhanced APIs here. And this can save you tons and tons of infrastructure and engineering time, having to build out data stores and parse through block by block and try and find those transactions. We built out transfers API, token API, and a bunch of other enhanced APIs here. And then the final product is like my personal favorite, Alchemy Amplify. I helped co-found this with one of my coworkers. And this is like strictly go-to-market partner for users of Alchemy. So it's offered to all users of Alchemy, and basically we kind of help bootstrap your launches, help amplify your launches, including things like Customer Spotlight, the Certified Infrastructure Alliance program, tweet shoutouts, and basically like anytime you have a launch or want to kind of get more distribution on your product, we'll sort of help you with that. Cool. So now that we kind of have a high-level overview of our product suite, I'm going to jump right into a live demo. I'm going to switch my screen share real quick. Okay. Sweet. All right, so now we're in the actual Alchemy dashboard. And so I'm just going to kind of walk you through all of our product tools and all the things you can use to sort of enhance your development when building on Polygon. So when you first land in the Alchemy dashboard, and I just created a new team for the purposes of this hackathon and this demo. When you first land in the Alchemy dashboard, you get to the home page where you can see a view of all your applications. Right now, I only have two apps. This is a demo app that sort of default in whenever you sign up. And then I have this app that I created at Sign Up Flow. So I created an app on Polygon Mumbai. And this sort of first table is a high level, like kind of health check overview. You can easily see like, okay, my requests have been rate limited, medium response time, stuff like that. And I'm in the Ethereum plus L2 ecosystem. If you were building on crypto.org or Flow, you could easily toggle between the two. So right below sort of our table here, we have the kind of onboarding flow. So this exists like within your first couple of days of signing up to make sure you kind of like know what's going on. You can grab your API key for HTTP and WebSockets right here. There's a little code example for actually integrating your Alchemy URL into your code. And of course, you can kind of invite your teammates right here and get support on Discord. The dashboard homepage overall is sort of to give you like a quick health check, like I mentioned, with your application. So have things here like graphs that allow you to like map out requests that are being made. And if you wanted to go in and kind of create a new app, right? So let's say you have your Polygon Hackathon app, and now you want to go build another app for like production. You can come into here and click on the Create App button. And reminder, so we talked about how nodes can take days to sync up with the blockchain. This is the equivalent of like spinning up a node. It's just basically creating an app. So you can create an app in like minutes. So I can just create one here, put whatever for the description. I'm going to switch the chain to Polygon, so building on Polygon, and I'll keep on mainnet. And now, boom, I have a front end, I spelled front end wrong, but front end development app for Polygon mainnet. You can immediately view the key and then start building on it right away. And so this taps into the same Supernode infrastructure that's relied upon by all the other chains, and that includes free archive access, so you can get historical data from Genesis all the way up until the latest. Cool. So if I wanted to dive deeper into one specific application, I can go here and click on the application. And so this is sort of the app that I created for the Polygon Hackathon. And, this sort of app details view gives you a high level overview of stuff in your application that you might care about. So this is pretty familiar to what we were seeing before in the dashboard homepage, but you can also see important things like invalid requests. So down here, I can actually see a breakdown of my different transactions and be able to see their parameters here. Which is really important, right? Because otherwise you wouldn't really have context and clarity into these things unless you kind of dug through logs and saw them. So I might see these 4 invalid requests and say, hey, what's going on here? I want to understand them better, and actually toggle and filter my requests here and see what actually was happening with this invalid request and get a kind of a specific scope on invalid request versus success. And so when I see an invalid request as a developer, I have a couple questions that I want to ask about it. I think number one is, how often does this happen in my app? Is it something that I need to be worried about? And I should understand how frequently this is occurring. And then number two is, why is it wrong, right? Why did I get exceeds block gas limit? And what can I do to actually fix that request to make it work again? I can actually answer both of those questions within the dashboard. So to start with number one, I would click over here and go to Explore Similar. And this will take me right into our Explorer tool. You can actually click that here in the top panel. And so this automatically added filters for us, right? Because we wanted to explore similar. But overall, as the Explorer tool sort of filters down all of your requests you've ever sent through Alchemy and gives you kind of a nice dashboard view of those requests. So now I can see here, this exceeds block gas limit. It actually only happened once. I had another error with send raw transaction. That was a different message, but probably not too much to worry about here with only kind of two requests failing. A couple of really cool things to call out with the Explorer tool. Number one, that we sort of break down the different parameters so that they're super easily readable. Otherwise, if you were to look at your raw requests, it's pretty hard to understand what's going on here by just looking at that hex. So we can sort of see the parameter breakdown here. And then number two is the ability to sort of filter out different types of things. So you can filter out JSON RPC error code. You can go by last hour, last day, last 10 days. You can filter by a specific method. So if you wanted to look for a specific method to understand what your call patterns are there, in addition to duration. So if one call is taking a particularly long time, you can understand what the parameters were for that call and why that might be taking a bit longer. So the Explorer tool is super cool for being able to do all of that stuff. Cool. So jumping back in to Polygon Hackathon app, the second part of a invalid request that we might want to dig in more into is actually, why is that request failing? And so again, we can do this straight from the dashboard using a tool called the Composer tool. And so the Composer tool is super cool. So this brought up a request, the exact request that was failing before. Let me actually grab a different failing request. This one probably doesn't make much sense to retry. Let's see, send wrong transaction. Sure, yeah, this one's good. Cool, so I'm gonna go ahead and retry this request from the Composer tool. And you can see it pre-filled our parameters here, right? So, we said this request is failing. Let's go dig in and figure out why. We can clearly see why this might be failing. Might have to do with the block number here. This doesn't look like a valid block number. And in fact, if I click out of this, I can actually see within the UI, the actual error that it was giving. So my block number here has to be a decimal or a hex number, or one of latest, earliest, or pending. This is not really a valid qualification there. So I can see how that might be the error. Now, if I want to fix this, I might switch this to latest. And then I can send off my request straight from the browser and see it appear right below. So this just got me the latest block on Polygon Mumbai. If I wanted to switch to a different method, I can easily do so here. So this is really good for kind of exploring new methods that you might not have used yet, or if you want to experiment with stuff or get data without kind of plugging it into your code, you can do that here. You can also change your network. So I'm on Mumbai, but I might want to do mainnet. And of course, you can change your chain as well. So if I wanted to do the same exact request on Ethereum mainnet, I can do that without having to toggle anything else. And there I have the latest block on Ethereum mainnet. Cool. Another really cool thing about the Composer tool is that you can actually copy the exact request that you're making and send it to a teammate, or send it or post it somewhere to get support on it. So if it's a failing request, you want to understand what's going on here, you can just copy config URL. And if I go and I post this into here, it'll automatically, my internet would work. It will automatically kind of pre-fill those exact parameters that we talked about earlier. And then you can send the request for whoever you sent it to. Cool. So the Composer tool is really helpful. Otherwise, if you wanted to kind of debug and experiment with requests, you'd have to use Postman or curl. So this can save you tons and tons of development time. Awesome. So I'm going to jump back into the app details page here. And scroll a little bit down. So the other really cool thing about the app details page, in addition to obviously being able to see all the recent requests that came through here, is you can get a scope on more details on kind of activity within this application. So here you have a view of sort of just high level daily requests. We saw this also on the dashboard homepage. Haven't had any rate limit requests for this application. But if you scroll down here, you can actually get really interesting user insights. So, for my application, since I'm the only one using it, it's not very interesting, this map, right? But otherwise, if you were using, let's say you were OpenSea and you're using your Alchemy Dashboard, you'd probably see requests coming in from all over the world. And we can give you sort of like heat maps of where the kind of hotspots are for those requests. Cool. So that's kind of the app details page. The next really, really cool tool that Alchemy provides in the dashboard is the mempool. So for those of you who don't know, the mempool is probably one of the most sensitive sort of states of blockchain when it comes to development. It's basically where all transactions go prior to actually getting mined. And so not only is it really, really sensitive and really important, it's also pretty opaque. I think somewhat intentionally opaque when it comes to the mempool. So in the mempool, if I send a transaction, it might become pending, it might get mined, it might get dropped. And understanding why all of those things happen can be really challenging. And so we built out the Mempool Watcher to sort of like open the door on what's going on in the mempool and for people to understand that better. So fortunately for me, all my transactions that I've sent here have actually gotten mined. But if it wasn't, I could toggle here and look at pending transactions and even looked at drop transactions. And you can do this for all of your applications, right? So if you see a transaction pending for a really long time on Polyscan, you can come into here and understand why. Maybe it's a nonce issue. Maybe you're sending duplicate nonces. Maybe you don't have enough gas, or it could be something else. In the mempool as well, you can filter down by address. So if I want to just focus on this as an address, I can search for that here and just see the transactions that are relevant to that address specifically. So there's a lot of really, really interesting tools that can happen here. And obviously debugging things in the mempool can be really, really difficult, which is why we listened to developers and built out this tool to sort of bring transparency there. So this can save truly days and days of development time. Cool. The next product I want to talk about. So while the mempool does kind of give you more insight and clarity into what's going on with your transactions, and it can reduce your debugging time from days to just minutes, even better is being able to understand what's going on instantly without even having to get to the mempool. And that's sort of where Alchemy Notify comes in. I haven't integrated notifications for my application quite yet, but these are notifications that sort of ping you when things are going on in your application. So rather than jumping into the mempool when a drop transaction occurs, I can actually get pinged by a webhook that says, hey, your transaction just got dropped. Maybe you have like automatic retries in place when you get that webhook, or maybe you jump in and try and figure out what's going on and understand it a little bit better. So you can easily kind of create a webhook here associated with your app and throw in a URL where you want that webhook to go. This is kind of more for the development side and understanding that. But if you also wanted to integrate notifications for your users, we have a bunch of other webhooks as well. One really interesting one is address activity notifications. So let's say I'm using an application and I send a transaction. I would probably like to know when that transaction got mined, or if someone sends me a transaction, I would like to know if I got money. And so that's where address activity notifications comes in. It basically will send you kind of payloads for any time there's activity on an address that you subscribe to, which you can imagine if you subscribe to all your users' addresses, you can get those notifications to them. We also have mine transaction notifications, so immediately know when the transactions get mined, and then gas price notifications that will tell you when gas is at a certain threshold if you want to wait to send transactions then. Cool. I know we talked about the enhanced APIs a little bit earlier, but here's sort of like real-time documentation there for within the dashboard if you want to take a deeper dive into them. And the last thing I'll talk about here is the usage page. So the usage page gives you vital information about usage for kind of all blockchains that you're using. For my application, it's just using Polygon. And this sort of can help you find optimizations in your workflows. So if you notice like huge traffic spikes in one day, maybe you are getting a huge influx of users, which is amazing and should be a good thing. Or maybe you have a runaway script that's sending a bunch of queries that you really don't want to be sending. Both cases, you probably want to know about that. So kind of here you can see your app usage by apps or months. Like I said, I just created this application yesterday, so there isn't a lot of traffic coming through here. But if you have multiple apps, you can sort of like filter down by those apps. So if I have two apps selected, I can actually see a breakdown of different requests between those two applications. And here you can get an overview of usage, over the course of the month. Here's kind of usage and compute units by day. And then we also give you kind of real time. I haven't sent any transactions in the last 15 minutes, but here would be like a minute by minute breakdown of those requests. And then down below, you can actually see the compute usage associated with specific requests. So obviously, my most compute heavy request is ETH send raw transaction, but my most common request right now is ETH call. So you can sort of see a breakdown and understand like what your app is sending and where kind of like the majority of your compute comes in. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. That kind of concludes the full dashboard tour for kind of the Alchemy Polygon developer platform. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much, Alan, for this amazing presentation. Maybe I will shoot you a few questions which asked by our audience, and that'll be it for today. So the first questions I got from the audience is, how do we know which node is at the right and presently sync? Because there may be one ahead and other at the back.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really, really good question. And I think it's one of the core challenges when it comes to building in Web3. So I think the sort of rule of thumb that we've taken when it comes to determining which node is right is like kind of like a majority rules, right? So when the majority of our node fleet is aware of a given block, we can assume that that is most likely the latest block. So another node might have an earlier block, but that node might be reorged. Let's say it's like one node has block 107 and all the rest of the nodes are on block 104. That block that's on 107 might have a risk of being reorged. So you might not want to get requests and serve data from that node. So it's a little bit tricky, especially when it comes to reorgs here. But we've sort of been driven by and abide by the majority rules here when it comes to consensus.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I don't see other questions coming up. Maybe I will ask one. So, so what do you think is like the most common difficulties that for new developers coming to build a smart contract on the Polygon?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, Chris. I would say so. You know, I think I have an engineering background in sort of the Web2 world. And when I came over to Web3, I found smart contract development extremely challenging and difficult compared to normal kind of Web2 development. And so I think, one of the core challenges is just like finding the tools and resources that you need to be able to like easily and smoothly transition from Web2 to Web3. And that, I think the Polygon team does an amazing job at that. At Alchemy, we have a bunch of tutorials on our site for kind of walking you through step by step. But the whole kind of system and ecosystem within Web3 can be really complicated and intricate. And so understanding at each step of the way what you're doing, what does deploying a smart contract actually mean, and what does that look like is really important. I think fortunately for Polygon, if I'm transitioning from Ethereum to Polygon, that transition is actually really, really easy. You literally just swap out your kind of URL. You can do that with Alchemy and then redeploy your smart contract to Polygon. So they've made that really, really easy, but transitioning from Web2 to Web3 can be difficult.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I don't see more questions coming out, and probably maybe we could just stop here.
Cool.
And yeah, I mean, thank you very much for the amazing presentation you just did, and also thanks for all the questions by our audience. I believe it could be a really helpful workshops for all the developers who want to build their own smart contract on Polygon network. And we have a series of workshops hosting by DoraHacks in the following days. So please follow our YouTube channel and Bilibili channel if you don't want to miss out any of them. And yeah, I think that will be it for today. Thank you very much, Alan, for everything you just said. And have a great day, guys.
Thanks, Chris. Take care.
Take care.